Hi, can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, great, because I didn't hear anybody. Are we beginning? Is there an introduction? I don't see the PowerPoint. Joyce, how do we work this? Somehow I can't.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can, Joyce, amazing. Great.
Okay, hold on. I'm just bringing it up. Okay, it didn't work. Just a second. Mike, I need your help. Just bear with me 1 second. We're doing a PowerPoint today.
Let's do it full screen.
Okay.
Let's do it full screen.
I don't know. Just a second, Mike. Can I try? Okay. I'm sorry for the delay, ladies. Just 1 second. I need to share screen.
It is no screen sharing.
Okay. Where my participants are gone. Where's the thing gone? Mike?
I was just clicking on stop.
I'm sorry, ladies. Just 1 second. This is a first for me.
And Joyce had it up there before, so I have faith, Joyce.
Does she have it
Thank
now?
you. Huh?
Does she have it on now?
No, it's not up yet.
Ah, yay.
Okay, we're getting there. I can't see it.
I can see it, Joyce.
Okay, I need to see it too, just in order to go through it.
Sure. Then we should confirm that the women see it also. Yeah.
Can everybody see it? Just nod your head if you can see it. Okay, just give me half a second.
Joyce, are most of the participants in Israel?
No, America, England, South Africa.
Okay, good.
Click on share screen.
It's sharing.
Okay, what can I see it?
Let us start and see if it can.
No. Okay, I'm doing it again.
Thank you, ladies. I started using a PowerPoint because
Okay,
that way you can see. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
I cannot see it. Can anybody else see it? No.
Okay, let's do it. It's not on screen sharing. Okay. Not the price.
I can see it now.
You can see it, but the problem is I can't. And I don't know why. When we did it a few minutes ago, it worked perfectly. Can everybody else see it? Okay, screen sharing is paused.
Why did you close it? Why did you close it? No, you just click on still review.
Okay. I think I've got it.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to show the first one?
Just stay there and I'm going to tell a story and then I'm going to tell you next slide.
Okay, sorry for the delay. Go ahead.
First of all, Joyce, thank you for putting this event together. It's wonderful. And I know people all over the world really need to like sit down, learn something new, and have some new thoughts for the day, especially during our crazy times. So I wrote a book called Moodopia. I'm going to tell you ladies a little bit about myself. I first became a lactation consultant, meaning I help women with breastfeeding problems. And what happened was I saw that a lot of my ladies were given a lot of antibiotics, a lot of steroids, a lot of psychotropic drugs for when they were emotionally having an upheaval after giving birth. And I knew that these medications were amazing, but I also know that for 5,700 years, women have given birth, had babies, and there had to be other solutions. And I ended up doing a 5-year program in classical homeopathy. I loved it. I went back and did a 3-year program and became a master herbalist. And now I do TV segments for NBC, CBS, and Fox News across the US, teaching people how to integrate safely alternative with conventional medicine. I also guest lecture at medical schools. And so what I want today to do is to introduce you to the world of herbs and aromatherapy. Nobody's going to walk away being an herbalist. I mean, if it was that easy, we'd all be herbalists. It takes many, many years. And I want to say that herbal medicine, as I said, has been used for thousands and thousands of years. It says in Tehillim Psalms that Hashem, God, gave grass for the cattle and herbs for the service of man. And the word there is service. And Hashem, God, also says that he put the refuah, the healing in the world before the illness. And if you look at the days of creation, Hashem, God, created plants and trees before man. And in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, we had a mizbeach, an altar, just to burn plants and essential oils. So using herbal medicine and aromatherapy is not just for, hit people on Instagram. It really is a very Jewish concept. It's been used just for generations. We'll talk about it more throughout. And why did I choose moods and Moodopia? Because I found in my office that even the most successful people would often get hijacked by moods, be it sadness or anger or frustration. And my goal with my book, Moodopia, was to help women understand the power of emotions and why we have emotions. So I'm going to begin with a story. I'll go through our PowerPoint. So I come originally, now I'm living in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York. For those of you that have ever been to the ghetto, it's almost like a third world country here. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. And if you ever watch a TV show, there's a Hollywood sign. My parents bought a house to the left of the Hollywood sign. So up in the middle of the canyon. So my school, my day school was in the city. So every day my mother would drive through the canyons and literally the streets go up and down to the side and around in circles. And there was this one corner where every day there would be a near traffic accident. 2 cars would almost always collide. And so my mother would say every day, thank God we didn't die today. And she got really frustrated because people that were unfamiliar with the roads didn't know that you had to slow down in this area. So she called the city, and this is way before Facebook and Instagram, many, many years ago. And the city said, if you want a stop sign there, you have to get 1,000 signatures. So my mother took her frustration and her anger, and she went door to door and got those 1,000 signatures. And to this day, there's a stop sign on that corner preventing car accidents. So I want to point out as we begin that if she didn't have that fervor, that anger, that passion, she would have never had the energy to get it done. So moods are important and they make us who we are, especially who women are. Next slide, please.
Okay.
You can just hit one of the arrows that when it's, yeah, perfect. So it's normal to not feel normal. Girls, before they get their periods, women in perimenopause and postmenopause, all the time we have feelings like we're going crazy. We could be sleep deprived. We could be lack of exercise due to corona. So it's very normal, so normal. Next slide, Joyce. So what does Moodopia mean? People are like, what is this word? So Moodopia to me means being in control of your moods so they don't control you. Also becoming a master of your moods, and you need to use these moods when you need them. There needs to be an energetic flow that you can tap into. I can't believe someone's at the door. 1 second and no one's here. Hold on, ladies. Okay, thank you so much. So you need to be, thank you, Shmuel. You need to be able to tap into those moods and that energy that moods elicit. Next slide, please. So in this office, what our goal is, or this lecture, is we want to try to maintain the cortisol or stress levels that we all have in our bodies all the time. So I'm making up a number. If there's any doctors out there, you can correct the number in the chat box below. But I want to say that, let's say Sarah Khanna and all of us stay 350 is our freak out mode. Like when our cortisol levels get up to 350, that's when we're over the top. So our goal is to lower our cortisol levels on a daily basis so that there's resting somewhere around 150 or 200. Now, here's the story though, and no guilt, don't feel bad about this, but if your mother was a little bit stressed when she was pregnant with you, your normal cortisol level is going to be higher than someone whose mother was not stressed out. So we can already be born into the world with higher stress levels. Thank you very much. But here's an even bigger problem. All of us live inside our grandmother's stomach also. Oh my God, so if she was also nervous, what does that mean? That means that when your mother was a little teeny baby, inside her mother, she had all the eggs inside of her. So you were also in your grandmother's womb. So there you go, those of us that have a little anxiety in our lives, our default is a little bit higher, but there are things we can do to lower those cortisol. Next slide, please. So I want to just say one interesting study is random acts of kindness. What does that mean? Studies show that people that do random acts of kindness have lower blood pressure, have lower cortisol levels, and on an average live longer. So we're going to talk about very inexpensive and easy things we can all do and teach people around us. And one thing is just to take on a habit, even if the person is rude or nasty, just holding that door open for someone, saying please and thank you, and having good manners. That is a very important tool that we need to reintegrate into our lives. Next slide. So here I just say, just do nice things. I mean, you know, if you're in a situation where because of Corona, you have to stay home too much, there's so many tzedakah charity organizations you can do online. And so you can literally even give 10 minutes a day without spending money. And I just wanted to open our eyes up to that. Next slide. So it's very interesting because there was a study done about smiling. And it's so peculiar because what they found was that when people just smile, even if they're not in like a great mood, you can look a little bit crazy, like, oh, are you gonna kill someone or smile? And just the actual movement of the muscles in our mouths change the chemistry inside our brain. So I have a whole chapter in my book, Moodopia, about faking it. And sometimes it's just not the right time to say what you're feeling. Like, you know, your kid or your husband could come home from school or work and you could be completely angry with them, and it's justified, completely justified to yell or scream at them at that moment, and they need to hear it. But if they had a really bad day, it's going to go right over their head. So sometimes we need to just fake it until it's the appropriate time to elicit and get the response that we want. So sometimes we need to check in before we respond. Again, when I say fake it, it doesn't mean that our feelings are not appropriate. I don't want us to become anal retentive and not say it. Just sometimes we need to read the scene and say, is this the time to teach that lesson? Or is this the time to make that point? Next slide. So here, back to that smile, is a really interesting study. So let me grab my pencil. So there was a study done, and this was repeated many times at a university, where they had 450 participants take a pencil, put it in their mouth, and they had them rate comics. Next slide, please. And in the next study, they took the same participants and had them put a pen in a position that elicited a frown. And what they found across the board is that when people even had that fake smile, they rated the comics as funnier than when they had a frown. So, you know, I joke like this all the time. So if I'm in New York and I have my fake smile, people are like, oh my God, she's definitely a pickpocket. Make sure she doesn't rob from us, right? And then if I'm in California and I'm smiling, you know, doing my fake smile in the stores, but I'm trying to be happy, all the women will say, oh my gosh, look, Sarah Khan got a facelift just like me. But anyways, if you're having a really hard day, like you wake up in the morning and in New York, you get a parking ticket. And then you get to your next destination and you get a flat tire, right? Typical day, there's so many nails in New York. And then you get to your dry cleaners, you have a big event that night and they lost your dress, right? These are like typical days, like, hi, thank you, universe, for letting everything fall apart. Really making a frown is gonna make everything 5 times worse. So that's a good time to smile. Next slide. So there you go. No matter what, when we see someone smile, it just gives us a good feeling. So if you have a loved one that's going through a hard time and there's nothing you can do about it, just smiling at their responses is enough to create good energy. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the cycle of sanity. It's one of my favorite topics, and I'm going to give an example. Maybe some of you can relate to it. So I come from California and moved to New York. And in California, you can have one sweater and one rain jacket. That's all you need. But in New York, everybody has to have like 5 jackets. You have the slightly windy jacket. You have the it's freezing cold jacket. You have the it's raining but not cold jacket. And then you have like the shop dress up jacket. And then you have your everyday in between jacket. So thank God I have 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls and 2 parents. So that was 9 people with each having 5 jackets. I mean, we had well over 50 jackets that needed to be placed. And in New York, we have these small little apartments. So what would happen was I used to pack up all the jackets and put them up in a ceiling closet that I kind of made. And all of a sudden it would be summer and there's no jacket, so I'm happy. And then it would be fall and, you know, it would be like 1 or 2 jackets. And then all of a sudden as the weather changed, there'd be 50 jackets and I had no place to put them, right? So I don't know if you can read my cycle of sanity, but I would be happy and I would get frustrated and then I would get sad and say, I never wanted to live in New York. I told my husband I wanted to live in LA, right? And then I'd start to get angry. What is this place? You can't find parking. You can't put jackets anywhere. So then I was sitting in a dentist's office and I was flipping through a Bed Bath & Beyond catalog. Remember when we used to have catalogs, not online? And I saw this unit that I could buy on a wall that had 50 hooks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the solution. If I buy that for the wall, I have a place for the 50 jackets. I became happy again. So cycle of sanity means that it is normal to be frustrated, sad, angry, depressed. But our real joy in life, really for most people, is when you figure it out like, oh, that's why my husband is like that. Or, oh, now I get why my child's like that. That aha moment is what really breaks through. So in order to have those breakthrough moments, we need to go through that cycle. We need to get that frustration, get that anger, get that insight, get that resolution to the problem. So what happens is people become miserable, and we become miserable around people that get stuck. Like those people that are always frustrated, like you can be around them, but after a while, like you can't be around them anymore. People that are sad, I mean, sadness is a really important emotion, but you need to experience it and move on. So cycle of sanity. And there's a story with Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, long story, but basically he wanted to find the most gorgeous ring. So he put out an edict that, you know, he's going to give however many rubles or whatever it was at that time of day to make the most gorgeous ring. And people brought him diamonds and rubies and sapphires. And the end result was the ring that won that said, "This too shall pass." It was a little band. So really, in order to live in a world as we are living today, we need to understand that this too shall pass. Next slide, please. So herbs are all the rage. All over the world, I'm going to read this quote. Herbal medicine has a written history of more than 5,000 years old. 75% of the world's population still rely primarily upon traditional healing practices, most of which are herbal medicine. Next slide, please. So WHO, which I know it's very iffy now, but when I made this PowerPoint, it wasn't. WHO, the World Health Organization, states that the global market for traditional herbal remedies is thought to be around 83 billion a year, and herbal use is on the rise. Next slide. So I just want to say, because I said in the beginning that Hashem, God, says he gave grass to the cattle and herbs for the service of man. When I went back to school and studied herbal medicine, I was shocked and astounded at how amazing herbs worked for chronic sinus infections. I had clients that came to me, they had been on antibiotics for years and years and they still got them. Chronic yeast infections, for children, chronic ear infections, chronic strep throat. And then I went into the realm of ADD and ADHD. And then I started helping women and men with herbs for sadness and depression and frustration. And, you know, we can talk about it at the end, but herbs are remarkable. And hopefully you'll hear one or two herbs that just resonate with you and you can begin to explore the world of herbal medicine. So most people around the world, maybe not in our Western cultures, drink tea. In England, they have tea time, and it's a very important event. In Japan, the Japanese tea ceremony, Japanese girls will take 2 years to learn exactly the temperature of the tea, how the tea works. Exactly. I'm reading some of the messages. Thank you. And tea is a very big part of many cultures. Certainly not in America, not in Israel. I mean, it's the Coca-Cola and coffee center of the world. But most people don't even think of them as medicinal tea. I mean, every grandmother in Europe used to give a baby chamomile tea to calm them down. And it was very funny because I watched this TV series called Midwives, which was just amazing. And anytime there was a crisis, anytime they'd say, hey, okay, go make a pot of tea, go make a pot of tea. And I was laughing so hard as an herbalist because it was like, before you do anything, you give the patient a cup of tea. So it's very popular. And I wanted to show you that I purchased on Amazon, I don't know, it was $10, this amazing glass jar where it's got a filter here. And you can just put your herbs in it, close it like this. The whole process takes you about 3 minutes. Put some honey, pour some boiling water, let the herbs steep, and you've got this great little container to sip on your tea throughout the day. Next slide. Teas can come in infusions. If you need more medicine from the plant, you're going to let the tea sit possibly overnight or for a longer period of time. When you use tea bags, if you put in only one tea bag, it's considered flavoring the water, but not so medicinal. So if I'm going to use a plant that is a root, this is a plant called Osha, one of the best plants for COVID-19. It actually opens up the lungs. When I had COVID-19, which I did have, and I was ill for about a month, thank God I didn't end up in the hospital. OSHA was one of the plants that I believe prevented it from going into my lungs. Next slide. Oh, but with the OSHA, the important thing to know is because it's a root plant, it would have to sit in the water for a longer period of time than a flowering plant. So I, though, in my office, basically I deal with, neurotic type A women and men that do not sit down and make a cup of tea. So I use herbs in what is called tincture form. It's a liquid, and you literally just take the shot glass like this, put in a little bit of grape juice, shoot in your tincture, down it like vodka, and run out the door. And this is much easier to travel with. Next slide, please. So you do not need to know how to make tinctures, but I want to expose it to you because knowledge is power. So here I've got some elderberries with me for anybody that's interested. I don't know if you can see it. These are elderberries, very popular and famous. And if I was going to turn this into a medicine, herbs also have a 10-year shelf life. So honestly, pharmaceutical companies do not want herbal medicine to be so popular. You take the herbal plant, it could be a seed, a root, the bark of a tree, the flower, these are the berries. You pour grain alcohol over it, you let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks, you strain it, and you have a medicine that will last for 10 years. Next slide, please. So anyone can learn to make tinctures. I remember one of my herbalist teachers said to me she'd rather have a student know 3 plants and how to make 10 medicines out of 3 plants than knowing 300 plants and only know 1 medicine per plant. So each plant we can make into a tincture to take internally, an oil to put on topically. We can make it into a salve. We could make it into a spray. So even if you just at this end of this lecture decide to explore 1 herb, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Next slide. So why aren't there more clinical, double-blind, placebo, gold standard studies on herbs? And the answer is, who's going to fund it? Like, who's going to fund it? Number 1 is you can't patent a plant. You can patent a component of a plant, but you can't patent a plant. So aspirin, which was a major discovery. I mean, most of us are really a little too young to understand the miracle of aspirin, but if you had a toothache or a splitting headache or COVID-19, the headache is horrible with COVID-19. To be able to take an aspirin was really breakthrough. You could travel with them. It was amazing. It was made from an herb called white willow bark. And chemists took the plant white willow bark, which was used by the Native Americans and other cultures for pain, toothache, headaches, and they isolated the salicylic acid and made it into an aspirin. Now, that's amazing, but long-term use of aspirins causes tinnitus, ringing in the ears. So millions of adults were told to take a baby aspirin to help thin their blood. And what we're finding is there's tinnitus or ringing in the ear clinics all over the US because that's what long-term use of it does. With children, if you give them aspirin, they can get a disease called Rye syndrome, which is deadly. But if you do white willow bark, you will never get tinnitus, ringing in the ears. You will never get Rye syndrome because we don't understand why Hashem, God, put all the components in the plant, right? So they're looking to isolate, and we know we use the whole plant. It's the whole plant that we use. And really, with white willow bark, you can make one of these, sip it throughout the day, and your pain's going to get better. I want to tell you one more study before we move on. The study goes like this. There was a study maybe about 8 years ago on echinacea. Echinacea is used for colds and flus, and it helps balance the immune system. So there was a big splash of a study. It was on CNN and ABC News, and it said this study showed that echinacea did not reduce the symptoms of the cold, did not shorten the duration of the cold, and overall did not help with the cold. So I'm like, I'm an herbalist and I know echinacea works. What is this study? So I looked into the study. The study was conducted at Harvard University, but it was rented out by a pharmaceutical company. Why is that? Because, hold on, sorry about that. Because labs in universities can only make their income if they rent out their labs. So a pharmaceutical company rented out Harvard, set up this study, and they set it up to fail. Here was the study. The study was giving echinacea in capsule form, and I don't use many plants in capsule form, either tincture or tea, because they don't capsule so well. When they sit on the shelf a long time, they lose their vitality. Also, they didn't adjust the dosage for the person's age or whether they were male or female or the weight of the person. And they said that they could use Benadryl, they could use Atarax, they could use Singular, any Benadryl, night, whatever. So really it was a completely both study. So you have to know that studies are going on. The NIH, the government run research lab in America, has a complete page on herbal medicine. There was the German E-Commission after World War II, which studied many plants. And actually in Iran, since there's been the embargo of pharmaceuticals, Iran is actually coming out with really great studies on herbal medicine. So they're out there, but someone has to be able to finance it. Next slide. So I want to begin with the herb called motherwort. I'm going to say they're all my favorite plants, but motherwort is an amazing, amazing plant. It's for hormonal gloominess, so you can take it before your cycle, during your cycle, and after your cycle, and when your cycle has passed. Motherwort is for when that black cloud is ascending and you're like, no, I'm at a good place. I don't want to go to that gloomy place. Or it could be that something challenges happens in your life. And motherwort helps dispel that gloominess and helps you see the best way for you to problem solve. And it makes you feel better. Next slide. So skullcap, I, Sarahana, True Confessions, could never live without skullcap. It's for nervous anxiety and tension. Right before COVID-19, I was actually on a book tour of my book, Moodopia. I was on my way to India. I had just been in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I had just been in Israel, Florida, Detroit, Pittsburgh. It was absolutely amazing. And I would bring skullcap everywhere I went. You know, to go through security at the airport. One time I was teaching in Detroit. I was teaching a medical on breastfeeding. I was the keynote speaker and my plane was delayed 12 hours and I had to get on a plane to Detroit. I literally landed in Detroit at 4:30 in the morning, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, my full day of lectures began. Like, really? Thank God I had skullcap. It's for nervous anxiety, tension. If you're applying for a new job, if you're going out on a date, if you're going out on a date with your husband that you've been married to for 40 years and you never go out on dates and you're so nervous just to like get everything together, skullcap is calming and relaxing without a side effect of sleepiness. And the question you should ask is, can we mix the two together? And the answer is, of course you can. You can feel gloomy and nervous at the same time. Next slide. So lemon balm is a really important herb. Everybody that's at the center can grow it on your windowsill, in your backyard, in your kitchen. Lemon balm is in the mint family, and it is calming and soothing and antiviral. It's not one of the strongest herbs I would use for COVID-19, but it is calming and soothing. You can use it for geriatric loved ones that are on many medications. It doesn't interact. You can make it into ice pops for kids if they have a fever, and you can take it anytime you fly because it is antiviral. Love lemon balm. Next slide. Hops. They used to make hops pillows. Hops pillows were all the rage at the turn of the century. They would take the hops plant, put it in your pillowcase because it does help induce a more restful sleep. They do add it to beer. So beer has a more calming effect as opposed to a hyper effect. And hops is a wonderful herb that you can use before you go to sleep. Next slide. Linden is one of my favorite, they're all my favorites. You're going to hear me say it all the time. So linden flowers just recently bloomed in New York, and you would stand under the linden tree and the smell was just intoxicating. Linden is very good for heart pain. If you're going through anything that's hurting your heart, it can help regulate and lower blood pressure. It also helps with digestion. In France, if you go out to a very fancy French meal with a lot of sauces that are high fat content, it is a custom in France to give you a cup of linden tea because it helps with digestion. Linden is such an amazing plant. I keep some by my bed, and before I go to sleep, I just put a couple drops in my mouth. I love linden. It's wonderful. Next slide. Valerian is a very common plant. Any of you that remember, was it the Rolling Stones? My mother's little helper. I don't even remember that song. Anyways, that was about the medicine Valium, which was very popular in the 50s going into the 60s. It was made from the plant valerian. Valerian helps calm and soothe. It's one of the most researched plants in Russia. You're not going to find a Russian bubby that doesn't use or has used valerian in their lives. Valerian is phenomenal for some people, and other people don't do well with it. I'm giving you a heads up. For blood type O's, valerian works wonderfully. For blood type A's, some A's get a little hyper from it and some calm down. It's worth trying. My blood type O's that take it during the day do not have that sedative side effect at all. They just feel calmer and soother and can go about their days. My blood type A's, a lot of them will get a little bit sleepy. It smells like dirty socks for people that don't need it. And I remember this one client said, Sarhana, I wish I had perfume of valerian. I love the smell and I love the way it makes me feel. And I'm like, really? That's one of the most disgusting plants because valerian's not my plant. But for people that use it and love it, it's just, they love the smell of it. Next slide. Fresh milky oats is another great plant. Again, I'm just exposing you to these so you can feel like you've heard about them. It's used for people that burn the candle at both ends, that just overwork, don't sleep enough, maybe drink too much coffee. It kind of calms down the central nervous system. Horses, when they run races, well, they don't run like this, but they give them oats before, because what oats do is it invigorates and calms you down at the same time, and that's what racing horses do. I usually add this to a mix of different herbs. I don't give this singly, is that the right word? Singularly. But like, let's say I would have someone that's gloomy and nervous. I would give them some motherwort and some skullcap, and then I would add to it if they were just burnt out, like they hadn't taken breaks like me, I would add some fresh milky oats to it. Okay, next slide. Passion flower grows all over Israel. I was shocked to see in front of someone's house just some passion flower growing. Look at that flower. It looks like it's an alien plant, like from outer space. It's gorgeous and stunning. It comes in an array of colors, and it's very, very soothing. Helps you have a deeper sleep. I'm not going to say that it puts you to sleep, but it definitely, when you go to sleep, you tend to have a deeper, more restful sleep. If you want to use passion flower or hops to help you go to sleep, you can't take it at 1:45 if you want to go to sleep by 1 a.m., right? You need to start taking it around dinner time to start calming your system down, maybe again around like 9 o'clock and then at 1 o'clock, because herbs integrate slowly into your system. Your brain reads herbs as food, takes what it needs and dispels what it doesn't. So passion flower, wonderful sleep aid. Next slide. Rhodiola has tons of interesting research. Also in Russia, they give this herb to athletes. It helps give you a little bit of a boost without making you feel hyper, like from a cup of coffee. Studies of rhodiola and depression are across the board. The depression where you like can't get out of bed, like I'm on the couch and I'm not moving. Life is not worth it. I've been punched in the face way too many times and I cannot get off this couch. That's where rhodiola comes in. Or just, I feel sluggish, like I know I should be happy. Gams lataiva, everything happens for a reason. I know I should be happy. I know, but I can't. I just can't break through. Rhodiola can help you break through. Next slide, please. Rose is an amazing herb for a broken heart. You know, all over the world, if you go visit someone in a hospital, what do they have in the lobby? Roses. And clinical studies show that when you hand somebody flowers, no matter what socioeconomic background, no matter what age, no matter what religion, everybody's cortisol level drop and they feel better by getting flowers. How much more so to intake them internally? So if you have a loved one in the hospital, you should be drinking some rose tea or taking rose in tincture. If you lost a loved one, you should be taking rose internally. It helps with circulation and it is wonderful. The question right now is, isn't it dangerous to have too much? Sounds addictive. We're going to go over questions at the end, but I love that one. If you feel afraid you're going to be addicted to feeling better, the answer is you really can't overdo these plants and you won't overdo them. Think about it this way. Parsley, cilantro, they're all herbs. Onions and garlic are also considered herbs. In our Materia Medica, that's like our PD physician desk reference, PDR on medicines. We have one on herbs. And you're not going to say like this, yesterday I made a chicken soup and I put in 5 onions. There is no way I'm putting any onions in with my meat today. It's not how we work. Or, wow, I had a parsley dip yesterday and I loved it so much and I'm not going to eat it today. So what I have found with herbs are people take it when they need and then they forget. They get busy. They forget to take it. And if you make a rose tea like this and sip it throughout the day, you're not going to OD on it. All roses are edible. Not the ones that you buy inside what's it called, a florist, because they color them and they put pesticides on them. But out in the woods, soldiers used to take the rose petals and eat them because they're very high in vitamin C. And roses have been used for generations. The Sephardic community puts rose water in everything, spray it on their face. So rose is just a great herb to know about. You can get it in essential oil. Just amazing. Next slide. So lavender is interesting. So we all know about lavender as an essential oil, but it's also used as a tea or a tincture. It's when you feel stuck. Like, should I stay or should I go? Does anybody know that song? It's really about like, you know, should I stay married or should I get divorced? That's heavy. Should I call my son who was rude to me or should I not? Should I stay at my job or should I not? Should I be nice to my neighbor who's just rotten and leaves their garbage everywhere? Like whenever we're stuck in these situations and we don't know what to do, lavender is calming and soothing and helps open up that door of feeling stuck. And you can just feel stuck emotionally, like I'm just sad all the time because I need my rose tea because I'm brokenhearted and it's hard for me to move on and I feel lethargic. So you could put some rhodiola, you could put some lavender and some rose in a bottle like this or mix it in a tincture like this and take it. And I'm telling you, you're just going to feel a little less stuck. In aromatherapy, it does work with helping you fall asleep. I think I have aromatherapy at the end of this PowerPoint. Next slide, please. I do, perfect. I'm only saying that because I made you a specific PowerPoint and I sent over the other PowerPoint, so we're missing a couple slides, but it's fine. So aromatherapy is very different than herbal medicine. When you make herbal medicine, you're actually taking the plant the way Hashem made it. I have here some rose hips. I have here some astragalus. Astragalus is an herb that you can put in a soup for the immune system. It helps balance and build the immune system. It is a bark and you can put it in a chicken soup and you'll get more immunity in your chicken soup. But aromatherapy is all the rage. I mean, everyone on Instagram, if anybody here is on Instagram, I am only because of my business. You know, people go to a weekend course and they become an aromatherapist and they say, oh, wow, essential oils can literally like stop cancer and change your life. And the answer is no, they can't. But Scents do help us a lot. Our olfactory system is something that sticks with us for years. If your grandmother always made an apple pie when you went to visit her, anytime you smell apple pie, you're going to remember your grandmother. There's this one place that I hike in California every day when I'm in California. I'm usually there in the summers. I'm in New York in the winters and in California in the summers, except for COVID-19's kind of switched everything. And I would hike up this canyon, and there's this one place that has this pine smell that reminds me of when I was in a horse camp when I was 10 years old. It's a couple years since I've been 10 years old, and no matter how many times I hike that, I remember being in camp. So our olfactory system has a very big impact on us, can help with our moodiness. And they say that, I don't know the exact quote, but it says in the Gemara that when tzaddikim, holy men, go into Gan Eden, heaven, that the plants open up and they reveal their smells to welcome the tzaddikim into Gan Eden. Amazing. And there's something in Japan called forest bathing. Forest bathing is when you just walk through the forest, and they find that when you start at the beginning of the forest, they check your blood pressure and cortisol levels, and then they check them at the end of the walk through the forest, and they find that everybody blood pressure is lower, cortisol levels lower, even if they're kind of rushing to get through the forest. And so they used to just think it was just looking at greenery, seeing nature, but now what research is showing is that the plants give out these essential oils, because the essential oils of pine and other plants in cypress prevents insect from them from getting infected by insects. And they find that breathing in those essential oils as you walk through the forest is what's really calming you down. So welcome to the world of aromatherapy. Next slide, please. Making essential oils is very complex. Most of us can't do it in our own homes. Next slide. So you can use essential oils to change the energy of your place, to change the mojo. I know that when I was in California, I used to get a little terracotta, like a little terracotta pendant that you can hang from your rear view mirror. And what happens is in California, because it gets so hot, you can put a couple drops of the essential oil on the pendant. I wish I had one here. And the sun will heat it up so the car will smell like the essential oil. Very inexpensive. You don't have to spend a lot of money. The pendant is like, I don't know, $3 or $5. So in the morning when I used to drive my carpools with my 5 boys and 2 girls, and I would pick up other friends, I had a 15-passenger van, I would put in the morning a stimulating oil like orange, lime, lemon, tangerine, or grapefruit, because everyone was like grumpy and they're tired and they stayed up too late in the summers, and it was like invigorating. So you can also have by your bed an essential oil diffuser on a timer. And if you have trouble waking up, I mean, with COVID-19, the world is different, but you know, if you had to wake up at 6:30 and you're not a morning person, you could have that diffuser go off at about 6:15, and you would get a little boost of stimulation just by breathing in these essential oils that are stimulating. Next slide, please. There's oils that warm. I saw a message before about how cold it is in Minnesota. So you could in the morning also on your diffuser have warming oils that wake you up in the morning. Rosemary, cinnamon, or ginger. You could do a ginger foot bath when it gets very, very cold. You could also dilute ginger in a little bit of lotion, massage it into your feet, put on warm socks and boots and go outside, and your feet will stay warmer. Excuse me, the ginger essential oil is a little too strong to put directly onto your skin. Rosemary, when you inhale it, it actually increases blood flow to your brain. A lot of students will breathe in some rosemary when they're learning. It helps with memory. Amazing as we age to incorporate some rosemary into our lives. And if you're sitting at a desk writing a book, yes, I am writing Moodopia for kids. It takes up a lot of time. So in my diffuser, I'll put some rosemary to like remind me that I'm loving what I'm doing and stay a little more awake. And cinnamon, we all know, I mean, they say that if you're having a bad gloomy day, you just take a pot of water, put it on your stove, put in a little cinnamon just from your cabinet and let it bring to a light simmer, and your whole house will smell like cinnamon, and it'll just make you feel a little bit better. Next slide, please. Oils that calm. We've got lavender, we know, we've got rose, we've got vetiver, and we've got lang lang. For some people, lang lang can be stimulating or calming. So let me tell you a little bit about how lavender works to help people go to sleep. So you have a kid who doesn't want to go to sleep. They have FOMO, fear of missing out, and they're right. They go to bed and the parents do lots of fun things. So what you can do is you can't use lavender oil once. It is not going to all of a sudden just make your kid go to sleep. But what you can do is every time you give the child a bath, you can put a couple drops of the lavender oil on their towel when they're getting ready for bed, and they will start to breathe in that lavender oil. Then you can put a couple drops on their pajamas, and they're going to start associating bedtime pajamas with lavender, and then you put a couple drops on their pillowcase. And what happens is after a couple weeks, the subconscious mind will make an association with lavender and sleep. It'll start to elicit that melatonin. Same thing with us as adults. We could do the same thing, put a little nightshirts, put a little on our pillowcase. You can find the smell that works for you, and your brain will associate melatonin increase with that smell. I have a gorgeous oil here that I got from Israel called neroli. You're either gonna love it or hate it. I love it. It's a bizarre, strange flower. And I put a couple drops on my pillowcase every night. So when I roll to the right, I inhale that neroli. When I roll to the left, I inhale it. And that's what I'm into this week. Who knows what's gonna be next week? Next slide, please. Oils for memory, as I said, there's rosemary, peppermint, sage, and cypress. Just to let you know, sage is antiviral. It is an essential oil that I did burn and diffuse in my house during COVID-19. I live in New York. It is the epicenter. Everyone I know had COVID-19. I personally dealt with hundreds of clients with COVID-19. So we could ask some questions about that in the end if you want. But these are other oils. You can put a drop or two on your hand, inhale it. You can put it on a tissue. It helps increase blood flow to the brain and helps with memory. Next slide. These are oils that make you feel prettier, more attractive. They're stimulating and exciting herbs: bergamot, delicious, lang lang, sandalwood, neroli, there's my neroli, rose, jasmine, patchouli. You gotta love the scent. You need to just find one scent that you like. And literally most of these you can put directly on the skin. If you're worried about it, you can dilute it in a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of jojoba oil or olive oil, put it on your wrist and smell it throughout the day. Next slide, please. Aromatherapy also comes in sprays, and you can just spray it around your room. It can really invigorate. Next slide, please. So there's so many ways to use essential oils. You don't have to buy an essential oil. You can spend $10 and just find one scent that you like and use it in a diffuser, in a spray bottle, any way you want. Next slide. So building your immunity, I do just want to talk about it since we are living in strange times. So these are a list of herbs that I think are very important. I'm going to read them. It's andrographis. It's a plant that grows in, it originally grew mostly in Asia. It's now in America. And it's the plant, let me put on my reading glasses. Andrographis is the one with the yellow flowers. We've got astragalus. Where's my astragalus? It's actually a bark. I don't have it up here. Cordyceps mushrooms, that's the tree with the mushroom growing out of it. I've got echinacea in the upper right-hand corner, the purple flowers. Elderberry is down in the lower left-hand corner. I've got golden seal. It's upper left-hand corner. Cordyceps, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. Cordyceps are below that. Go down with your pointer. That's cordyceps, that little fungi that looks like it's alien. And then the reishi mushrooms is in the upper right, is on the tree. That's the reishi. And then usnea is the lower right-hand corner. It's a fungi that grows on a tree. So how these herbs work is you can buy yourself an immune mix from a company called Wish Garden Herbs or Herb Farm, HERBPHARM. If you want one with a kosher sign, you need one called Herbalist and Alchemist. The other ones are, there's no trace in it. They are completely kosher also, but Herbalist and Alchemist pays for a kosher sign. So what I suggest everybody doing is getting an immune combination and taking it once a day to help stimulate that immune system. If you start to feel sick, you can take it 3 times a day. And if you really feel ill, you can take it 4 times a day. My COVID-19 patients, I mean, it was probably just a miracle in my luck, but none of my clients ended up in the hospital. I dealt with clients from newborn. In my practice as a lactation consultant, all of my new moms tested positive for COVID-19, all of them. So I probably, in a span of a month, saw 500 to 550 new moms with COVID-19, all the way up to patients that were, clients that were 75. And the herbs seem to help their immune system fight the infection. So these are some of the herbs that I love. Next slide. So here's our summation, just to remind us, do random acts of kindness, inexpensive, doesn't cost any money, and that includes just doing nice things. Like even if you're not in the mood, learn to fake it. Again, I don't want you to be anal retentive, but you've got to make sure that your emotions fit the energy of the moment. And if they don't, you may have to wait to express those emotions. Maybe you need to write a letter, rip it up, write a letter, send it to a person, send an email, say it, put it in a voice note. I'm not saying don't do it, but fake it in the moment. If it's a time where it's Erev Shabbos and everyone's really excited about it and you're really upset, nobody took the garbage out, you're completely allowed to be upset that nobody helped you clean up for Shabbos. But it doesn't mean that in the moment you're going to get the result. Maybe after the Devar Torah, maybe a better time to mention you need a little more team effort here. Smile and laugh. We didn't even talk about laughter. There was a doctor in the early 1900s that said, what, and I'm paraphrasing, what is it about human beings? They're the only animal, except for hyenas, but that's different, who when they see something funny, their diaphragm vibrates, and it vibrates all the internal organs inside their body. And the strangest thing is that they feel better after it. So laughter is like an internal massage. Most of us love an external massage, and yes, you should get that to reduce stress and anxiety and build your immune system. But laughing builds the internal organs. Remember your cycle of sanity. Bad things happen to good people. We could go on for hours. It's not fair when bad things happen to good people. And we see in this world that even when people do good, they're not always recognized in this world. And it's also not fair. But remember, it's important, and it just stimulates the emotions we need to survive. Use herbs. Don't be afraid of herbs. Herbs are our friends. Hashem gave herbs to us as a gift. They're there for us. Start slowly. Of course, it's best to work with an herbalist. This is not an ad for me, but myself and other herbalists now, especially post-COVID-19, we're Zooming and WhatsApp videoing people all over the world, which is exciting. You can work with an herbalist. You could read my book, Moodopia, or you can just experiment on your own and smell nice things. You know, if you're in an area like Brooklyn that doesn't smell nice, that's an important time to burn some essential oils in my office. Hold on, something to smell. Okay, I know what it is. As long as it's not a child, I know what it is. Okay, smell nice things in New York. In my office, I always burn essential oils, and my clients will come in after battling being in a cab and in New York traffic, and they come and sit on my couch and go, ah, It smells so nice, Sarahana. And you know, sometimes it's a little rose or a little lang lang or a little neroli. And I've never had a client ever say, could you stop that smell? It's always like, ah. So just keep that in mind. Next slide. Fall in love with herbs and they will love you back. When you incorporate herbs in your life, they will heal the body. They reduce inflammation. They reduce joint pain. They can relieve headaches, build the immune system, help with your emotions. They're amazing. Next slide. If anybody wants to be in contact with me, I have a website. I have an email through a website. You can follow me on Facebook. Those of you that are on Instagram, I do little 1-minute videos that I post on Instagram. That tends to be the attention span of most people. And I talk about herbs. I walk through the streets of Brooklyn or wherever I am and say, oh my gosh, look, this is an edible plant. If anybody's interested, my book Moodopia is available on Amazon. And it speaks about every single herb I spoke about and more. And I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Thank you, Joyce, for this wonderful opportunity to meet new women and share my 28 years of research.
Thank you. I'm gonna,
yeah, questions.
right. Okay, if anybody has any questions, please feel free now to unmute yourself.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi. For helping pregnancy, what herb gonna help me? Hello? I don't hear you.
Okay, 1 second. Can you please unmute yourself?
Okay.
Me?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Okay, 1 minute. You're muted. 1 second. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. Can you hear me? Okay. So it depends on what your complaint is during pregnancy. A motherwort is not recommended. Passion flower is amazing. Passion flower is safe while pregnant. So is skullcap. So is lemon balm. And these herbs can calm your emotions down and make you feel like you can function better. And they're safe while breastfeeding. You can breastfeed. You can take 99% of these herbs while breastfeeding also. All the herbs will say not safe while pregnant or breastfeeding. That's just what their attorneys want them to do. But you could always email me with a question and I'll tell you whether it's safe while during pregnancy.
Okay, there's quite a few questions in the chat if you want to address any of them.
Okay, let's find them. What herb is good for arthritis? Always complicated. The nightshades, the foods, tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, cabbage, peppers should be off the table for anybody with arthritis. Turmeric, actually, you have to take quite a bit of it, but turmeric is very good for inflammation. I use something called hyaluronic acid. It's actually what's inside our joints. I take it from a company called Neocell, Neocell, and that helps a lot with inflammation. Okay, let's see what we've got. Shira says, can it get you high? These herbs do not have that feeling of making you feel high. That's the benefit to it. Like, you can take skullcap before you give your PhD dissertation, right? And you're not going to feel high from it. So it's a very, very different, very, very different. My email and phone number, that was at the end. Does anybody want that again? Do you want my email? It's moodtopiabook@gmail.com. And you can look me up, sarahana.com without an H. Do I want to say something? Okay. Is it bad to mix herbs with prescription medicines? A lot of the herbs I talked about today are safe with prescription medicines, but I would talk to an herbalist to confirm. Like, what we say is, like, St. John's wort should not be taken with psychotropic meds because the psychotropic meds can mess up what the St. John's wort is trying to do. So a lot of these herbs are safe while taking prescription medications. Yes, I can say something about Vitex. Vitex is the herb chasteberry. Chasteberry has been used for generations. It helps regulate the hormones. If your estrogens are too high, or your progesterone is too high, or your testosterone is too high, Vitex tends to balance it. It's very good perimenopause and menopause, and it's very good during your cycle. It's an herb I use a lot. It also helps with fertility. Is rhodiola different from rhodiola? Just the spelling. Rhodiola, you can get it online. If anybody wants to write down, I'll repeat the companies. I do not represent any of these companies. I represent my book, that's it, but I don't represent, Herb Farm, H-E, you know what, let me type it in. Let me type in what I like. Herb Farm. I like Wish Garden herbs. And I like, this one has the kosher. They're all kosher, but this is herbalist and okay, there we go. Those are the companies. Are you worried about the side effects? I always say start slowly. Start with just a few herbs. I've got my shot glass here. I got my tincture. You can certainly start with 10 drops of the herb as opposed to taking 40 or 50 drops. And dilute it. I always dilute it in a little bit of grape juice, cranberry juice, not orange juice. I really haven't had side effects. I really haven't. And usually I take a history of the client, but herbs like lemon balm, skullcap, valerian, I told you can make some people hyper. Rhodiola, I'm a little bit of a hyper person, type A personality running around. Rhodiola would not be my herb of choice, but I don't think I'd have any side effects of it. Herbs to help bone density, yes. Herbs are phenomenal for bone density. Nettles, N-E-T-T-L-E-S, nettles has a lot of trace vitamins and minerals. There's an herb called horsetail. You can, from these companies, get combinations. Herbalist and Alchemist makes a capsule form of an herb that builds your bones. But yes, herbs are phenomenal for increasing bone density. Of course, you need to have a high protein diet. You need to work with weights and move your body to increase your bone density. Any other questions that I'm missing? Anybody else want to type in or verbally give a question?
Any interaction with statins?
So statins are interesting. I wouldn't have a problem with most of the herbs that I mentioned at all. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Nope.
Anybody else? Any more questions?
Do any of the herbs control cholesterol?
Yeah, there's an herb called red rice yeast. It's hard to get a good quality one, but in clinical studies, red rice yeast does help very much. And there are herbs, you can look them up online and then you can shoot me over an email. But there are a lot of herbs that can help regulate cholesterol. Ashkenazi Jewish women and men have high cholesterol. It's just part of our DNA. The more vitamin D you get, the more it lowers your cholesterol. And we really are spending too much time indoors these days. But really, cholesterol is beneficial when you're from Russia, Romania, Hungary, because the cholesterol would actually help protect your heart in the winter when you were low in vitamin D. And you want to know a great trick to get more vitamin D in your body, besides taking a supplement, is you take white mushrooms, regular white mushrooms, and you chop them and you put them on a cookie sheet. and you put it outside for about an hour and it will soak in all the vitamin D, and then you just add that to your salad. So I forgot to mention, because I always forget, but on my website, I think it's $15. It's not expensive at all. I have a Build Your Immunity series where there's 15 or 18 videos. They're all about 3 minutes. And I talk about ways to build your immunity. They're very easy to watch. And I talk about examples like how to get that vitamin D into your system. And I mean, how cheap is that? I mean, if you're adding mushrooms anyway, stick them outside for a little bit. Even 15 minutes, they'll absorb the sun.
Okay.
If you cook them, does it destroy the vitamin D?
No, it does not. So here's an interesting question. It's true. I take 40 drops of Vitex. My sister takes 20. She does not feel good. So it's interesting because Vitex is one of those herbs where some people feel phenomenal on it and some people don't feel phenomenal. That's just the way that it is. It's the same thing like valerian. Vitex is chasteberry. So I've gotten that. Some people, it will regulate their periods and get them pregnant, and other women, it'll mess up their period. So that's a good observation. Yes. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question quickly. What is the herb that you use to regulate the hormones you mentioned?
That's what I was just talking about. Chasteberry. It's called Vitex. It's one of many herbs. And if your sister does not do well with Vitex, she should stop taking it. And there's another herb called Chinese peony, which from gorgeous Chinese peony flower. And she should switch to that herb because that works similarly. And if Vitex is not your herb, switch to Chinese peony.
And if you're interested in the skull cap, should we be in touch with you for that?
Well, it depends. Like, you know, if you want to consult with me, you can make an appointment and we can spend an hour and a half and then we talk about everything. Or if you don't want to spend the money to do that, you could purchase my book and I talk all about how to use skull cap, the dosages of skull cap. So those are the two ways I would suggest.
Okay, and the last thing will be for arthritis. You mentioned that there is a company if we have arthritis, and what
It's called NeoCell. I think it's called NeoCell.
Oh, thank
I'll
you.
write it in. NeoCell. And I can never spell hyaluronic acid. I think it's 2 words.
Okay.
Hyaluronic acid. Hold on. I don't know. I have issues with this. Let me see. I did not spell it right. If anybody can spell it right and look it up on their phone, that would be great. But it's hyaluronic acid. It's what is naturally in our joints. And when you add more hyaluronic acid, the inflammation in your knees go down. They used to give it actually in shots. And when they found that they gave it in shots, it didn't work as effective. So the clinical studies stopped, but the original clinical studies of taking it orally were phenomenal. The medical world just took it to the next step.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chinese. I'm not a good speller. Peony. That's how it is. Okay, yes. Any other questions?
Okay, that was phenomenal.
Great.
Thank you so much. Really, it was great. We learned a lot, and thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for pulling this together. Thank you, ladies, for showing up. Have a great day. Smile, laugh, even during hard times. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bob, a great meeting, all of you.
Ladies, just
Thank
before
you.
next week.
Thanks, Joyce.
Feel free to be in touch.
1 minute, ladies, just before we go, our next week's speaker will be Nachman Seltzer. It'll be at 2 o'clock Israel time. So I'm sorry for the Americans. I'm happy to send a link. So look forward to seeing you on Zoom next week. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Joyce.
Bye.
Thank you again.
Pleasure.